Welcome to Talksicology, brought to you by Recovery Unplugged, the place where we talk about all things substance abuse, recovery, and mental health, with guests offering varying perspectives and viewpoints. Hosts Joseph Gordo and Jason Cabello share about their addiction and recovery and other serious subject matter through lighthearted yet candid conversation. And welcome to another episode of Talksicology, the #1 podcast, as Joseph would say, in the known universe about all things addiction, mental health, recovery, music, ADHD, skateboarding, unicorns. We cover it all. We're a blanket podcast of all things that interest me personally. Joseph is out there doing God's work, very important things. You know, he is the vice president of all things. I don't know the exact title, but he is a bigwig at Recovery Unplugged. He runs all 3 Austin facilities simultaneously and, you know, has a family, does a lot of things. So when I call him 3 minutes before the podcast and just want to, you know, go over a couple of things, and then he says, "What podcast?" I understand these things, and I'm okay with it, because I know how hard it is for me to stay organized, and if you would look at my calendar compared to Joseph's calendar, like, I got it pretty easy. So, that being said, it is me solo hosting today, but that's okay. I like to get a little one-on-one time with our viewing audience, and I'm sure our #1 fan, my mom, will appreciate more Jason time. Not that she doesn't love Joseph, but hey, who are we kidding? We know who we know what the public wants, and so that gives me the opportunity today, because I kind of thought that Joseph might have felt a little bit left out with the subject matter that we're going to be going over today, because it's not something that he deals with. So let me just go ahead and bring on our esteemed guest, somebody who I don't think I've actually met face to face. However, in the background of Zoom calls, we have had hundreds of conversations, as her wife is probably the person who I spend the most time talking to in my day-to-day operations at Recovery Unplugged. So I already feel like we're family. I definitely do. So without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and introduce just all-around badass Emily Cohen. There she is.
How are ya?
Good. How you doing?
I am good.
Good.
I am not gonna lie, I didn't sleep at all last night, because in true ADHD fashion, I spent the entire night going over all the things that I should say, shouldn't say, wanted to say, didn't know what to say.
Right.
Retold my story to myself like 5 times in my head, and then woke up this morning and had no idea what I even was doing before I fell asleep. So.
Right. Understood. Understood. So, yeah. So you know, it's kind of funny, because Joseph, whenever we talk about something that's a little bit outside of his wheelhouse, he kind of he's like, okay, well, are we still going to talk about this? And I know, so you and I are going to be able to talk about, we're both in love with women named Gabby.
That's a funny thing that we have in common.
Yeah.
Not mad at it, but a funny thing.
Yeah. So my Gabby, your Gabby, we'll just go ahead and take possession of our Gabbies as we're
totally
talking.
Down for it. Let's do it.
ADHD, check. Unmedicated, medicated. So we will have some points and counterpoints there. Broward County, Florida. Another thing that we could talk about.
Man, that's a whole other freaking world.
Yeah, so Joseph, whenever we have people on Broward County, Joseph will be like, "Are you guys really talking about Broward County for all this
Mm-hmm.
time?" But then we have fucking 3 episodes dedicated to Kerrville, Texas, and I've never been to Kerrville, Texas, but I'm a good sport about it. So
Sounds like fun. I
it
don't
is.
know what's
They,
there.
they they have a good folk festival there that I know of, and they are huge. So yeah, I'm not besmirching the fine name of Kerrville, Texas. They are they have a big recovery community there. So a lot of
Okay.
people who are in the Austin, South Texas, or Central Texas recovery scene, good chance they might have gone through Kerrville at some point in their recovery journey. So lots of things that we can talk about. But first, introduce yourself, Emily. To me, because I mean, like I said, first time that we actually are having FaceTime
We've
here.
never had.
And then,
Oh, you have a badass hand tattoo as well. Look at that.
yeah, nice.
I don't have anything on that side yet.
Yeah, you got the little heart. That's cool. Yeah,
That's a rough tattoo.
yeah, it
My hand
was.
tattoo is the worst tattoo ever. The healing was like epic.
It's funny. I had probably 6 months clean when, and my good friend. I don't know if you knew anybody who worked at Color Fast Tattoo out in Coral Springs, but
Oh yeah, that's where I got like a ton of my stuff.
oh, okay. So Jamie Rysick,
Okay.
he's one of my best friends, and did a lot of my tattoos, and so I get clean, and of course the first thing I want to do is start getting more tattoos, and everybody's like,
Yeah.
"Why don't you wait on the hands or throat or face or anything like that?" And I was like, "Okay," and then I went and just got my hands tattooed like as soon as I got clean, so I don't regret it.
I right before we got married, I had a tattoo that I needed to get covered up because it had significance to it that I didn't want to take into my marriage.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, I got to get this covered up. And I also had this cute little guy here who I got at like a Friday the 13th flash sale, right? And I was like, okay, I wanted to do an octopus's garden. And like Gabby's crazy about the Beatles. And so is my kid now. So like when I came home, my kid named it Ringo. And I said, oh, we need an octopus's garden. And so like I held off for a while and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. And I walked in, I saw my buddy and he did it. And I didn't even think about it. And after that fact, people are like, dude, hand tattoos are like, that's serious. You just went in there and I just wanted the thing covered up and I wanted my shit done.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't even think about it.
Yeah, I was just like, you know what? I was 42 years old. I had just gotten clean off of 25 years of fucking my life up. So I was like, I didn't know what the future held for me, but I didn't think that anything that was involved. I didn't think a hand tattoo was gonna derail any plans that I had.
Sounds like healthy impulsivity. I could co-sign that.
Considering what the impulsivity was prior to
Right.
that, yes, it was definitely one of the it has way less consequences than most of my impulses do. So
Doesn't all go away.
so let's intro
Okay.
a little intro.
We said that was going to happen.
ADD. We don't have anybody to reel us in.
Right.
But that's
this is
okay.
gonna be fun. So I figured that I figured that the best course of action here, considering that I never stay on track for anything, is to like just tell you about me as much as possible. And I figured we go off in like 20 different forks in the road.
Sounds good.
So we'll see where we go. So I'm recently 40, which is a really weird situation for me. And I am like taking this weird inventory of my life. That's helpful and sometimes is like a little too classically like generalized anxiety disorder.
Right.
And and trying to apply all of the lessons that I've learned, because apparently 40 is like this magic number. So, there's a million things that I could say about myself that literally have nothing to do with me.
Okay.
So the best way to say it is that my wife calls me a badass feminist unicorn. I am definitely a feminist. I am absolutely a unicorn. Some days I feel badass, some days I don't.
Right.
Just depends. And like over the past 5 years, I've been pouring myself into healing from codependency, and this idea of love addiction, and needing to have toxic relationships around me. And it's been a freaking wild ride.
I can
Um,
imagine.
it's been wild. And in that process, I've been diagnosed with ADHD and PTSD. So hello. Uh,
Got a lot of it going on. But
it's a freaking ride.
so where'd you grow up? Where did you start your formative years?
My journey. So I was born in Detroit, Michigan. And if I look like I'm crying, I swear I'm not. I like my allergies are popping today, and I thought I'd put on some eye makeup and look pretty for you. And my face is like, yeah, right, bitch. So that and my menopause fan. It's just like so I'm probably crying if you think I am, but we're
Okay.
gonna like hit on allergies this morning.
Okay, hopefully.
Um, so I was born in Detroit, Michigan. My parents were born and raised in that area. And when I was real young, we moved, elsewhere to the New England area where my sister was born. And then, we got the hell out of Dodge because my dad was having some issues with some not so great people. And my parents were both addicts. I was born into a home where both of my parents used.
Okay.
We fled the New Englandish area to Florida, of all freaking places.
It's a refuge.
Yeah, apparently, man, they're all coming this way. And
There's some gnarly people up in the New England area, though. So, like, I mean, there's gnarly people everywhere, but
there's gnarly people everywhere. New England's an interesting bird. I actually would love to like land there eventually. I have a bunch of family in Boston and New York, and so I would love to land there eventually. But yeah, man, Florida's an interesting place. It's always been interesting. I'm not going to talk about all the shit going on in Florida. I have to like restrict myself from doing that because then this becomes like Emily's activist podcast, and we're not going there today.
Okay.
I'm not activisting about that crap today.
The political stuff we're talking. I mean, because there's always. I mean, maybe we could just talk about like the Florida man type bullshit that we hear, with meth alligators, and
you know as well as I do that Florida man exists. He is Florida's Santa Claus.
Oh Jesus, yes, absolutely.
Oh my God.
So
he shows up at every barbecue and every event and every news story,
and in different forms too. I mean, it doesn't. I think Florida man encompasses so much. It's there is the one who you would picture, but so when I moved to Austin in 2020, and right after I moved out during COVID, what's the what was the Netflix show about the Tiger King? Is that it?
Oh, yeah.
So Tiger King comes out and everybody's like, oh, you got to see it. And I'm like, I've been to Homestead and Davie. Like, I'm not going to see it.
I know 5 of these guys.
I know. I'm not going to see anything on there that's going to hold my interest.
There was, right? Like, yeah, there's a lot I could say about that show, but I know a lot of those dudes.
Yeah, me too. There used to be. So what part of Florida did you grow up in, or what part of?
So, well, that's an interesting part of this is that we moved to like the Clearwater St. Pete area. And when I was 3, like I was right around 3, and then my parents like immediately got in recovery. And I'm guessing that like that's because like my dad knew he had problems coming his way.
Right.
And they both got clean, they both got sober, and they got involved in the local AA and a 12-step recovery world. And so like I grew up in 12-step recovery.
Wow.
I was going to meetings with my parents from the time I was a tiny little thing. And my dad used to throw these wicked pool parties where like all of the people from all of the home groups would come, and we'd have these big parties, and me and my sister would just like run around the pool deck and like meet everybody. And so that was like my life. And then when I was 5, my parents got divorced, and my mom moved me and my sister with her to Boca.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time I was 7, they had both remarried people that they met in the program. So like addiction is just a part of my story. without it being necessarily mine, but it's a huge part of
Osmosis.
my story. Yeah. And like I'm so genetically predisposed. Um, all of my time was spent in NA and AA.
So
And
do you think that
yeah,
there was so you probably you didn't get to see too much of your parents on the using side of it. You got to see them. I'm sure you did when you were young, but
yeah, I don't
so
remember
the
that.
majority of it was them in recovery. So
Yes.
yeah, so for me, my parents did. My dad died of inactive addiction, not he didn't overdose. He died of cancer, but he was very much in his active addiction when he died. It was after I got clean, so
Yeah.
it was always cool that he got to see me get clean because he always thought that he's got this like this Mexican bravado that not even bravado but there's this thing with a lot of Mexican families that I know. Joseph talks about it. He's of Mexican descent as well. Is that the families are very supportive, but like let's not talk about exactly what it is. And like so anytime me or any of my cousins like get in trouble or anything like that, we just call it like our off years or when we were on vacation or something like that. Like it's
Oh,
mentioned, but it's not really discussed in full detail. So my dad always thought that I should have learned from his mistakes. Honestly, but then it was like I
isn't that
didn't.
what they always wish?
Yes, I've talked about this story before on here. So my mom and my stepfather in the music business. So I was around, I was around a lot of drugs and, because this is late 70s, early 80s. So, I mean, music industry, Miami, you could imagine,
Oh yeah.
all the stuff that I'm seeing. So I go to stay with my dad, who was living out in California at the time. And I couldn't have been more than 7 years old. And, I'm sleeping and then kind of pretending like I'm half asleep when he takes me around because I don't know, it's this fun game that kids play. So their parents will just pick them up and take them everywhere. And he's doing he's doing a deal. And then we get back in the car and like we get in. And then I was like, well, was that cocaine that you were buying? And he freaked out that I knew what cocaine was. Not,
Right. Like
no
you
big
weren't gonna
deal
know.
that he took me on the deal with him and all this
Right.
stuff. But his main concern was that I knew what it was. So that just if that just paints a little bit of a picture on how it was.
There's like this oblivious factor, right? And I mean, I think that I do with my own kid, right? Like my kid's about to be 13 and I absolutely find myself sometimes going, how the hell did you know that? Like where did that even come from? And
Kids are fucking smart.
dude, kids are crazy. It's wild. It's wild to see yourself in tiny form.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
like
Oh
it's
God.
like it's crazy. It's
Yeah.
really like a bizarre, odd situation.
It is. It is. Yeah. I mean, just I always think it's hilarious when people think that they're hiding shit from their kids because it's like your
Yeah.
kids know absolutely everything that's going on. I was there was a friend these friends that I used to use with. And they had thankfully they both got clean. I'm not going to mention their names here, but they got clean. But when we were using, we would go to their house, we would go into their bedroom, and then we came out, and then one of their little kids, probably 4 years old, was like, "Are you guys doing that blood thing again in there?" And we were all just like, "Ooh."
Yeah. Kids know a lot. They pick up on a lot. And it's wild because like, before I met Gabby, I was in a really toxic, like emotionally abusive relationship with a using addict. And I'm sure we'll get to this at some point, but this is like that relationship really propelled me. Well, first of all, let me say that like almost every relationship I was in before Gabby was toxic.
Hmm.
So like that was a big part of my um figuring things out about myself. So that relationship really broke me and it got me to realize um that the common denominator was always me, right?
Yeah.
That's a really scary realization to come to. And let me just make this disclaimer, right? Because I'm sure I'll talk about a lot of this stuff is that abuse is not okay. It's never okay. I will never give the people who abused me any type of justification or license to do what they did. I didn't have it coming. I didn't bring it on myself, right? I don't believe any of that crap.
You didn't ask
But
for it.
right. I like people take advantage of vulnerable people and it sucks. And like they should be held accountable for it. And I had to realize that I was the common denominator in the people I was choosing to have relationships with.
Right.
And that led me on this journey to figure out what it was that had me thinking that was the type of love that I was looking for. You know what I mean? So what's crazy is that like, if I'm being totally honest, like love and affection and like oxytocin hit was my addiction 100%. And so my child grew up in that with me. And after I left this relationship and I'm like in this journey of healing and figuring out like what comes next, my kid starts talking about stuff that I had no idea that he even knew. And I thought I had protected him really well. You know what I mean? Like we always think that we protect our kids really well. You know, when I hadn't. And I also thought that I had done a really good job of not showing him what codependency and things like that look like. And I was so dead wrong because when he started exhibiting signs of that, right, in his relationships with his friends and family members, and even with me and Gabby, it was wild. And I remember sitting down one night and just crying and saying, oh my God, I don't want him to have a life like I did. I don't want him to make the decisions I did. I don't want him to feel the way that I felt. And I think that my parents probably like thought about that as they journeyed into recovery. I know that my dad talks a lot about how like he was, I'm not crying, I swear, about how maybe I am, about how he often was worried about me and that like he knew from all his years in recovery that the only thing he could do was just like let go, right? And let the process happen and let whatever higher power or being or whatever like take control of the situation because there was nothing he could do.
Do you think that growing up in a situation like that with people who are constantly doing work on themselves let you kind of gave a little bit of, let's say, wiggle room for you to put yourself in harmful situations because you knew that you'd always be able to get help or find help? Or was it just something that you thought like, this is what my parents do, this has nothing to do with me? Because I never had any of that. Like I never saw anybody in recovery. I remember there was a family friend who got wasted at one of my parents' parties and got into a big fight, and like my uncle had to knock him out. And then next time I saw him, he came to the house and he was like, oh, you know, I'm an alcoholic. And then I didn't know what that meant. I'm like, yeah, no shit. Like, I remember you at like starting fights at my parents' parties. And then he was like, no, I don't drink anymore and stuff. And it was foreign to me. So, you know, I didn't, and
Yeah.
growing up in the, you know, I know you said that you just turned 40 and I'm about just finishing up my 40s here. So growing up,
Allah.
when I did, you know, going to therapy or rehab or anything like that, it wasn't like a victory like it is today. Like, oh, hooray for you. It was like, what the fuck is wrong with this person? They got to go to rehab. They got to go to a shrink.
Right.
It had a stigma to it.
Yeah. I mean, I was in therapy from the time I was 5 years old until yesterday. So like
Yesterday was your last day in therapy?
well, actually Monday, and then I have another appointment tomorrow. So it's
Oh,
good.
okay.
So I've been in therapy my whole life. And I will say that I think that like it definitely played a role in me feeling like I could venture out a little bit and like there was a place for me to come home to. Much of my story is wrapped around like emotional abuse with my mother,
Mm-hmm.
Which I didn't know whether or not I was going to say that out loud, but I said it out loud. So and like, this is with a lot of sober time, clean time, whatever you want to call it, under her belt. So I have to say up front that like recovery is not like an automatic byproduct of not using drugs.
Right.
That's a whole other story, right? And like you hope that people are going to get their shit together once they stop using drugs, but not everybody does. And I think that whatever method you choose to recover, whether it's 12 steps or it's, personal discovery or whatever spirituality or whatever, right? Whatever it is that you use, you have to be willing to put the work in. And like some people just don't. And so I will not lie that over time, there has been a bad taste developed about touting specific forms of recovery as like religion, as like biblical, right? Because it really has to do with how a person wants to get their shit together. And so I didn't necessarily experience that in my home that I was living in.
Mm-hmm.
So my father and my stepmother really put in a lot of work. When I'd go to visit them, this is the funny thing, right? At my mom's house, it was always disaster. Her and my stepdad were always fighting. It was always abusive. It was always crazy. It was always insanity. Love was this weird mythical creature that like sometimes popped up and sometimes didn't. It was a very weird situation, right? And at my dad's house, it was like a gosh darn Disney movie, right? There were freaking little animals and squirrels and happy little butterflies, and people were always happy and everything was fine and we were all good and God is good. And it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I was like, I only saw my dad once a month. Of course, everything was fine. They only had to be on their best behavior for 2 days,
Yeah, that's interesting.
I had a very convoluted idea of what all that looked like. What I will say is this: when I was 17 years old, I thought I had a problem with drugs and alcohol. Why? Because I was a teenager fucking around and doing stupid shit. And so I knew that NA existed. And so I started going to meetings because I knew that there was a method of recovery available to me. And I was like, well, I'm going to end up being an addict anyways, because everybody else in my family is. So I might as well get my ass there now while I'm just doing the small shit.
Right.
I had already kind of like predetermined that for myself. And I did that for a few years.
What years was this that you were going to NA meetings?
So the first time, like 17, 18, 19.
Mm-hmm.
And then I met my first husband. This is a role of relationships. Okay. We're going to have fun here.
Mm-hmm.
I met my first husband when I was 19 and I stopped going because why I need to go anymore. I found
You found what's going to fix you.
Found my new hit. And that's like what, that's probably the most interesting thing about my experience is that until I hit 35, I had no identity. I had no personal identity. My identity was whatever your identity was.
Okay.
Right. Have you ever seen the movie Runaway Bride?
I have not.
So this is my favorite analogy in the world because every time I watch this movie, it's like somebody like throws a cinder block at me. Julia Roberts is Runaway Bride.
Is that the one who always gets to the wedding and then right before gets cold feet and then
gets to the altar and then she's like, peace out, I'm done. And Richard Gere is the reporter that goes to like do the story on her as she's going into her fourth wedding, right? And so he's this big old asshole, but he's really cute. And he goes and talks to like all her previous fiancés, right? And he interviews them and asks them all these questions. And he always ends with, what was her favorite eggs? Like, how did she take her eggs? And their comment is always, oh, her favorite eggs were like this, just like me, right? And that was my life. So whatever eggs you liked, whatever your value system was, whatever you did, I did, because all I wanted was for you to love me. And if it was something you were interested in, then it meant that you would love me and you would love who I was. And that was like, that was a blinding reality for me when I recognized it. And I thought, oh shit, like, so it's funny when you say like, if that people constantly working on themselves, like, I don't think so, man. I mean, I'm sure it gave me like some knowledge of what was available and where I could go if I had problems. But it didn't, it didn't keep me from having my own really toxic experiences.
Right. And I could see it being maybe even a deterrent as far as, you know, what I would think, what I would see at your mom's house, the way you described it is just like, okay, so maybe you're not doing drugs anymore, but it doesn't seem like you are doing much else other than not doing drugs. If, you know, they're always fighting and yelling at each other. And, you know, if that's what recovery looks like, I don't know if I want any part
And
of
I didn't
that.
really even understand it though, because the concept of recovery didn't necessarily make sense to me, right?
Understood. Yeah, that makes a
Because
lot of
I never
sense.
saw them using. So I knew the stories that I heard. I'll tell you, if I really wanted to use drugs, I learned how.
Right.
That I knew the stories and I heard people talk about how they had changed their life around so immensely. And I saw parents give people medallions, and I saw so much hope and love and beautiful work and recovery. And which at the time, like the concept of recovery wasn't actually what I saw. I just saw a lot of love, right? Something that I wish I had. And then I also saw people who were like fighting outside of meetings. And, you know, I have in my life experience just come to realize that like humans are humans, and you can't take the human condition and apply it to how people recover from any type of mental health situation, because we're all people, and trauma runs real deep, man. It runs real deep, and it affects how people do everything in their life. And I hate, I think I hate admitting sometimes that like I have to look beyond the things that people do and consider what was done to them from the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that my story includes a lot of abuse, and God only knows how I've treated people when my trauma gets triggered. And I'm not saying it's okay. Again, never okay, right? Abuse is not okay. Nobody gets a free pass to be abusive. But when I see like the crazy, like now I can think about it. But then, you know, I couldn't wrap my head around that.
So now
I
that
only
you
knew
are
that,
in,
yeah.
so now that you're in a healthy relationship, you know, your son is growing up and getting to see that. What are you doing to end that cycle?
So I will tell you that it is a constant it's a constant effort, because my need for validation was so strong in my life, because it's what told me that I was loved, that I've had to learn how to validate myself and just be okay with the way that I feel about myself and understand myself. That's a weird freaking thing.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know what that looked like. And having a healthy relationship with somebody else means having to have a healthy relationship with myself.
Yeah. I'm in my first healthy relationship too.
It's wild.
It is. And it's, you know, after doing a lot of work on myself, I realized like, you know, I was in no position to be to try to be a partner to anybody, because I mean I was a mess and kind of a piece of shit too. You know what I mean? Like all I cared about was myself and getting high. So I mean, if that's what's going on inside, you can't have anything healthy externally. So
Right.
you know, once I started doing the work on myself, and then Gabby and I started dating, And me realizing like, hey, if I want to keep this going, I'm going to have to do things a lot different than I feel like I should. Like I am going to have to throw out all these things that I think I'm entitled to and, realize there's another person involved here. But if I work on that, then everything seems to get better. And, we definitely had like a couple of rough patches, and I owe everything to the work that I've done on myself, at least on my end of it, to be like, I 100% have to take 100% of this person's feelings and what they're going through into consideration before I react to something and how I'm going to react to things. And knowing that just because I don't like something that I hear doesn't mean I have to act on it. Like, let me, some shit that you hear from, recovery people is, let me play the tape through here for a second. Okay. So if I react this way,
Oh my gosh.
if I want to fight, I could get into a fight really easily. But if I want like a nice quiet night, like sometimes I just have to say like, maybe she didn't mean that the way that my ego wants to take it, maybe I should just maybe I don't have to internalize all this stuff. Take some things because you know how it is when you're with a partner who's, you guys joke around all the time, and it's like sometimes you're joking and then sometimes the joke seems like it goes too far, but it's like if we're just joking, like I need to take like you were still just joking, like,
I think that like also what happens is that, especially if toxicity is where you come from and then you just draw that out, right? It's really hard not to apply all the stuff that you've already learned about toxicity to a healthy relationship. So it goes both ways, right? So I'll be able to apply all the things that I've learned about myself in my own recovery in all of my future relationships, and not romantic, because I'm not doing that. Again, Gabby's it for me. But
Me
I'm
too.
talking like forget romantic relationships, right? This was a problem for me in every single relationship that I was ever in. So I can take everything I've learned now and apply it to every friendship, every business relationship, everything that goes forward. But the same was true for applying all of the toxic beliefs that I had to all of the relationships I had up until this point. And I applied them to the beginning of this relationship.
Yeah.
Some of the hardest moments for me was realizing that when I met Gabby, I had done the same thing in this relationship that I had done in every other rebound relationship, right? And I had such a different feeling about her that I didn't want to do it again. I was like, listen, this is the deal. If this is going to be the one that works, I can't do it the way I've always done it. If I want to get off the psycho train that I have put myself on,
Choo choo.
like, hello, I had to do something different. It was not going to happen. And I think that the concept of hitting rock bottom is such a real and serious situation. And some people don't hit rock bottom from drugs, from any other like addiction situation. And somebody just pulls them out before they're ready. And sometimes that saves their life and sometimes it doesn't, like you just can't tell how somebody is going to make it. The ultimate thing though, is that you have to want something more, something better for any of this shit to work. Right. And I was so self-loathing for so long. Why does this keep happening to me? Why do I have victim written across my forehead? Why do I, attract all of these people who just want to hurt me? And look, the reality is that abusive people are out there. They're always going to be out there. And I had to take a look at what toxic narratives I had continued to apply to every situation in my life, because I would look for I hate saying this because I'm trying to come from like a nice mental health perspective of like, we don't say things like psycho because it's not good, but like, let me just talk real talk. I found the sickest fucking person I could find and I made them my pet.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know that's what I was doing, but that's what I was doing, because to me, if I could get them to love me, then I had beaten the ultimate level of the game, right? In my house, love was on like a stick, like a carrot. You know how they like train a racehorse,
Mm-hmm.
and that racehorse never knows that he's not going to get the carrot. He just keeps running for it.
Yep.
And when the horse gets tired, you give it a little nibble of something so it has renewed motivation. And that little nibble was an oxytocin hit for me. That was like, oh my gosh, I could feel it through my whole body. And that's what I experienced in my home as a child up until I was an adult. That was the relationship. And all of the scientific evidence and therapeutic evidence tells us that what we experience in like the first 5 to 10 years of our life is how love remains for us. That's how
Mm-hmm.
we see love, the love we get from our caregivers. And so for me, having a healthy relationship didn't make sense because there was never going to be the oxytocin hit.
Yeah.
And like, what's like the hallmark of addiction is the obsessive compulsive need to get that feeling that you got the first time. And so I would long for huge knockdown, drag out fights because the honeymoon period would bring me that feeling that I felt in the first 6 weeks of the relationship, where you felt like you were floating and you couldn't eat and couldn't sleep and couldn't breathe.
You get to have the fight and then you get to make up afterwards.
I loved that.
Yeah.
So being toxic people, getting into a relationship with people who had like narcissistic tendencies was golden for me, because I was so codependent and I was so reliant on making you happy so that you would show me you were happy, so I would feel validated in my experience. And then I would get the hit I was looking for. And then we'd fight again for 6 months. And then we'd have like a huge blowout. And then I'd get my hit. And like, you can't tell me that that's not addiction.
Right. Right.
So that cycle had to be broken somehow. And I hit rock bottom. I hit a point where I was so broken and I was so desperate for anything different, because I would look in the mirror and I would not recognize, like, my wife calls me a badass. That never felt badass. I would look at them and go, who the hell are you? Why are you doing this to yourself? And that's the reality of it. And so, like, why did I always have victim across my forehead? Because I put myself in situations where abusive people knew they could take advantage of me.
And victims never heal.
It is, let me tell you, this is the conversation that I had with my therapist on Monday, was like, you can recognize that you were a victim, right? That you were victimized. And then you can work through the trauma of that, right? And everything that happened. Or you can spend your life with an identity of victimhood, that everybody's always after me, everybody's hurting me. And listen, some people have to feel that as long as they feel it. I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
I had to do something different. So, so that's what I did. And I really, the first few years of my relationship with Gabby were like, I was like, listen, I'm going to do something different. I want you in my life. I love you. I love spending time with you. My kid freaking loves you. But I need to not do the same thing I've always done. And so I needed the freedom to live by myself. I lived by myself for 3 freaking years. I never lived by myself. I moved in with every single person I ever met in 5 freaking seconds.
Right.
3 years, I had my own place. I paid my own bills. I watched whatever shows I wanted to watch. I started making myself dinner, like when my kid was with his dad, and I had like my nights alone in my house all by myself, which was the scariest shit ever. I made myself like food that I saw on videos on Instagram. And I was like, this looks good. Let me try it. I don't know what my favorite meal is.
That's awesome.
I didn't know anything about myself. So I think that breaking the cycle was started with falling in love with Emily and getting the hit from myself, from my own validation.
There you go. Don't cry.
I'm not crying. I'm good.
All right. So before we run out of time here, we definitely need to talk about some AD. Is it ADD or ADHD? Because I'm ADHD. Are you
So I guess I'm ADHD.
What is your
I guess it's just what they call ADD is ADHD now. I haven't heard a doctor say ADD in a long time. I've diagnosed ADHD, primarily inattentive.
so the difference is, as far as I've learned, is I have to act on things. Like I'm so where an ADHD person is going to lose interest in the conversation, an ADHD person is going to walk over here and start messing with something. Like I physically have to get up and do something.
I I'm probably both. Then.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm not sure how that works either. I've been trying to learn as much as I can about it. So give me your what is your top, what we could call an ism? What is your top ADHD thing? The thing that maybe bothers you the most, or the thing that you might have to try to harness a little bit? Because as far as I know, and have you seen the documentary The Disruptors?
I haven't.
Check it out. It's about all the super successful people who have ADHD and how they either treat it or just figured out ways around it. But it's a very interesting watch. So what is your top one? What is your when it's in full gear? What are you doing?
When it's in full gear. So this is what my wife and child call mommy after dark.
Mm-hmm.
So when the meds wear off, this is what happens is I can't stay. This is the inattentive part. I can't stay connected to whatever's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just end up somewhere else, brain wise, right? I go on little journeys and there's no way to stop it, right? And I think that the hardest one is if I'm not looking at you directly in your face, and I will say medication has helped us a little bit, but not huge, but it's definitely helped. If I'm not looking at you in your face while we're having a conversation, I stop hearing you.
Gotcha.
It's like, sometimes it's not even like they talk about the peanut gallery where the teacher's like,
yeah.
It's not even like that. It's like the sound ceases to exist. And so if I look down at my phone, or if I look over here, especially in a crowded space, so like if I'm at a party, or if I'm at like a party, I can't remember last time I was at a party, but like I used to go to a lot of networking events and a lot of galas and social shit in the nonprofit world. And like, if something happened over here and I moved my eyes for 1 second, the conversation was over. I stopped hearing it. That is a really difficult thing for me. Because then I have to say, oh yeah, and then admit to the fact that I
spaced out,
went off on a, right?
Yeah.
And I hate that. I miss a lot of information that way.
Yeah. So I what I'm trying to work on currently is interrupting people. That's big. And it's hard, it's a hard thing when, especially like working in creative stuff where it's all ideas coming out and like a bunch of people are talking at the same time. And if it comes into my head, it just comes out of my mouth. Like, it's not like oh, hey, I'm going to interrupt this person whose opinion and everything that they're saying is 100% as important, if not more important than what I'm saying. But as soon as it comes to my head, it just comes out of my mouth. So that's one thing that I'm working on.
Do you ever try to write it down when it comes to your head?
No, I have not.
So my biggest issue with that is that I feel you so hard on this. It comes to my head and it's not so much that I do have to say it, but my problem is that I have so much fear of forgetting this great idea and then being like pushed into the background while everybody else talks about their great ideas. It's like so much rejection sensitivity.
Yeah, I don't even have that. I don't even have that buffer zone to be like, idea, let me write this down. It's like, I think as it's formed,
it comes out
before it's even one, like as like the idea, like it's here's super slow motion. Here's the idea, and here's my mouth.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's like I'm trying to learn how to control that.
I get that.
One thing for me that is, and it sounds so tiny when I say it out loud. And maybe that's something that I should recognize, but it takes me so long to get out to do anything. I pace
Oh my
so
gosh.
much and I have so many bags with different things. And luckily, when I started
Yep.
reading about it, and it wasn't until, a couple years ago, or not even a couple years ago, maybe like a year and a half ago, I really started like, saying like, hey, if I'm spending all this time fixing myself or improving myself, this is something that I should really start paying attention to, because people talk about it. And just because I can't take the meds doesn't mean that I can't fix myself. So once I started reading about it and learned that I am just a textbook ADHD poster boy, I'm not unique. These aren't things that that only I'm dealing with. It's like so I have, if I go to clean my room or my office, like Gabby will tell me, you didn't clean, you just put things in little piles. And I'm
That's
like,
cleaning.
right? But
That is 100% cleaning.
right. So
Like,
to the ADHD mind.
yes, but it is. And like, so let me just throw this out. So I actually have a degree in clinical social work. Like, that was where I started my process. And funny thing about that is that like it exacerbated my codependency so much that I just decided that being a therapist was not for me. But
Oh, okay.
in all we'll have a whole other conversation about that.
For part two,
Um,
yeah.
in all of that, right? The things that I learned in being a therapist, is that like brains work in so many different ways, right? And in the research that we've done on ADHD, and autism for that matter, right? Like just neurodivergence in general, our brains just work differently.
Yeah.
And this world is set up for the easiest possible capitalistic consumerism possibility. How can you get people to do what you want them to do efficiently and fast and with as much productivity to make the people at the top feel good about themselves? Listen, that's a whole other conversation too, but that's just like the way that everything is set up, and the way we teach people in school is set up that way, and the way that we put numbers and prices on things is set up that way, and the way that we build our marketing structures is like that. It's just life.
Yeah.
So if my brain works in a different way, that doesn't mean I have to fix anything or that I'm wrong, right? This is what I believe about myself, right? What it means is that I have to give myself my own reasonable accommodations. And so I have to do the things that are going to make me feel better. Not you. I could care less if you think that my ADHD is annoying or not. I don't fucking care. I did at one point in my life, but I don't give a shit. I'll walk out of my house, and if you think I'm quirky and weird and can't get my shit together, you don't have to live in my house. You don't have to sleep in my bed or pay my bills.
Yeah.
I don't care. But for me, I feel uncomfortable and crazy when I can't do basic functions.
Yeah.
And so I have to create reasonable accommodations for myself. Like that time thing. Oh my God, I can't get shit done. If I know I have an appointment, a friggin' haircut where I could wear my sweatpants and go 5 minutes up the road to my barber, it's at 3:45 in the afternoon. Around 10:30, I'm like, I can't do anything for the rest of the day because I have to leave the house at
Oh my
9.
God. Yeah.
Oh my God. It is wild. And so like I've just had to start setting timers, and like I try to do all the things because listen, like medication is great for so many different things, and some people can take it and some people can't. Medication doesn't change the fact that I'm ADHD. That's not going away.
So for me, packing. So when I have to go on a work trip, I have my camera equipment, which is,
Mhm.
and everything is modular. So everything, it's little pieces that go in. You got your handles, you got your batteries, you got your battery chargers, and
Do you have labels on everything? Because I would lose something every minute.
no, I don't. And I'm so surprised that I haven't lost more than I have or anything important. So that is, yeah. So for a work trip, I have my camera equipment that I have to bring. I have to bring my stuff for everyday work, my laptop, my notes, my hard drives, things like that. And then my clothes. So I have to give myself a full day to pack, and then about 5 hours before I have to go to the airport to make sure that I have everything. And then I will pack so many clothes and then
Oh my
end up
God.
wearing the same pair of pants.
Two things.
Yeah, I'll wear the same thing the entire time, but
Wait,
I will
how
have
many underwear do you pack? How many pairs of
all
underwear?
of them.
All of them.
All
I
of them.
take my drawer out and I just dump it in my freaking suitcase because God forbid, nobody knows what's going to happen that day.
Yeah,
I might need 4 pairs of underwear.
yeah.
Oh my.
Every single
So
pair, even ones
it's
that I
so
don't even
funny.
wear, like they'll have holes in them, and
Like ones at the bottom that I should have thrown out 6 years ago.
yeah,
And I didn't. So for me, I work extremely well under pressure.
yeah,
Um, and I start planning in my head 6 weeks before. So I was working for somebody. I was doing work with somebody that wanted me to be able to travel often, which is the freaking bane of my existence. I don't know how you do it. It scares the crap out of me. And I she was like, oh, okay, can you come out? You know, whatever. She wanted me to go like maybe go to the West Coast or something. I don't know. We were talking about like traveling to like the California area. And I was like, oh yeah, when? And she's like, oh, maybe next weekend. And I'm like, what?
that doesn't give me enough time
What?
to pack my underwear.
Next weekend? Because I start packing in my head weeks before the trip, right? I have to have a whole setup. But then 2 hours before we leave the house, I'm like taking all my things and putting them in, right? This is how I got my graduate degree.
Yeah,
I wouldn't study until the night before, because I would essentially just spend 6 hours memorizing everything,
yeah,
because my brain doesn't pull in the information the same way. I've learned that I'm dyslexic, and that I have a really hard time like just learning things, right? And taking the information. So if at the last minute I just suck it all in like a sponge, I can just put it right back out. So
yeah.
this is past Spanish in my undergrad was, and this is hilarious because my ex-husband will tell you that he used to just sit there and with his jaw dropped because I would take the word, like we were supposed to write, you're supposed to go into class and then on test day you have to write down the words to whatever the story is, right? And I would write it down, and then the night before I would say it out loud over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, and I would just memorize it. I had no idea what the words meant, and then I would go into class and I would write it down really quick and I'd get like a 97.
The last minute stuff, and it's like I will be like, especially if I'm editing like a commercial, like I just filmed the commercial, and then had to have the edit done, and it's like, okay, I'm giving myself a week and a half of work time to edit, and I will sit there frozen, just absolutely fucking frozen.
I can't do it
until it's like, this is due in 24 hours, and then I will just work 24 hours straight and get it
and
done.
you pull out the most amazing work of your life.
I don't. Maybe I need that little edge or something. Right? I don't know what it is. And it's not on. It's just this is textbook ADHD stuff. So.
I think that it is. Yeah. I mean, I really. It's wild, like what I figured out, and especially like how many women I know that have figured this out just in the last few years. Because when the world shut down and we all had to sit inside and we couldn't like mask anymore, like emotionally mask, right? Not like put on a mask for COVID, but like we couldn't mask our isms anymore. We had to like just be, and I have met so many women who were like, holy crap, I went my whole life like never realizing this is something that other people deal with. I just thought I was a bad wife. I just thought I was a bad mom. I just thought I was a bad person. And the reality is that like, you know, brains are funny and we just don't give ourselves enough credit, right, for just having a funny brain. But I will tell you that it also really is important to surround yourself with people who are not only like they need to be supportive of you, right? Like Gabby is so incredibly supportive and like we make accommodations for each other, like always. But also like she will say, hey, listen, you're not listening to what I'm saying. I know that you're checking out. Is there a way that we can like have this conversation in a different way? Because I need you to hear me.
Mm.
And that's wild because I have to have people in my life who are going to say, I totally respect the fact that your brain works differently. And I need you to participate in this relationship.
Yep.
Like, I can't say, oh, well, I have ADHD, so
That's
because
it. That's the other thing that like I was talking about earlier. So, I can't get mad if my Gabby said, like, if we sit down to watch a show, right, and it's her show, whatever it is, like if we're sitting down to do it,
it's her show,
and then, well, it's something that we're both interested in, like, it could be something that I'm totally like, we're watching Succession, which we both love. 10 minutes into it, I'll just start talking. What do you want to do this weekend? Blah, blah, blah. And
oh my God.
And then she'll be like, Jason, can we just
That's
watch the show? And then, the ego wants to get angry to be like, well, I'm talking here. But then I'm like, well, no, we sat down and I was the one who most likely was like, okay, it's dinner time. Let's sit down and watch something. Let's have it on. Right. And then I start talking as soon as it comes on. So yeah, those are the
So things. What do you do when that happens? Do you have like any stim things that you do?
So for work meetings, I have this little, I've shown your Gabby, like, I'm like, if my hands are ever going like this down here, I have a little Bart Simpson on a skateboard that I'm just constantly like, ew! And that's my little widget.
So I have this is something that I've done for myself, that has been really important, is that I have little, what do I want to call them? Like fidget boxes, right? Like rescue boxes, all over my house. And they are not nearly as organized as they sound. Like for instance, in my room where this happens to be my room, but this is where I do most of my Zoom meetings and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And like any recording that I do. And so I have these are like little, magnets, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
They're specs. And these are a life source because I play with them. They're different colors and I visually stim. I have bottles of glitter all over my house.
Oh my goodness.
Because I just pick them up. And when I'm on a call and I'm bored as hell and I just want to talk all over this person, I pick up my glitter and I spin it. And it helps like my brain get centered into whatever's happening. So like I play with my little magnets, I crochet. If you saw like the couch that I'm sitting on, it's only clean in this one area. There's like 5 crochet projects next to me.
That's cool.
So when
can you do a Talksicology logo crochet? That would be
oh my God,
fantastic.
All right, I'll tell you what. If this is I have told so many people I'm going to make them projects, and they're all sitting in the bag. I think I probably could, but it would.
If you get around to it, that would be amazing.
Yeah. So like 6 years from now,
okay, I will.
We're just gonna go. Oh, look what Emily made.
When AI has taken over the podcast universe, and there's a aJason and an AI absent Joseph, then we could.
And it'll be like,
yeah.
I'm so okay, but I'm not gonna lie. I'm sad. I wanted to meet Joseph. So another time.
Yeah, you'll have to come on. Yeah,
he should know he's missed, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Because I love talking to you. I feel like we could talk about the ADHD stuff all day long because it's really like it's cathartic to have that space with somebody to not only say like, oh my God, I go through this too.
Yeah.
And also somebody who's actively working on themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But
that's big.
So that being said, you do have to come back. You do have to come back when Joseph's on. We are getting towards the end. So we have
already.
Yeah. So we have what we call rapid fire question time.
It's rapid fire question time.
All right. So you ready?
I've heard this so many times and now I'm not prepared.
You're not prepared.
Nope.
Okay. So Joseph's not here, so I'm going to ask his favorite go-to question. Ben and Jerry's comes to you and says, We need Emily's signature ice cream. What's in it and what's it called?
Oh my God. So honestly, I hate to be this codependent, but it's fish food with way more caramel in it.
Okay. What's it called?
It's called Sticky Business.
Oh, that's pretty good. I like that.
I don't know where the fuck that just came from.
Nice. Okay. Favorite David Bowie song?
Oh, Starman.
Starman's a great one. Have you seen the new documentary?
Have you seen my
I remember.
You know about
Yeah.
You had prior knowledge.
Yeah.
I haven't. My mother-in-law asked me if I saw the new documentary, and I haven't yet. I need to watch it.
So next time you come on, we'll talk about that. Okay. So time travel vacation becomes a possibility. You can go anytime in the past, any location, where and when.
I want to go be a witch somewhere. Burn me at the stake, baby.
Salem.
Yeah, take me somewhere where I can go like be witchy and piss men off. I'm down.
That's pretty.
I mean, I could do that now.
Yeah, you could do that now, especially living in Florida. I think you just got to go outside.
Yeah, I mean, either that or like the Renaissance era. I'm a big Renfest person, so take me back to like Renaissance England, where I can speak in an accent and drink mead and eat turkey legs with my hands more than once a year.
There you go. Okay. What is the last time you experienced a Florida man thing in person, and what was it?
Oh my God. I don't even know.
This
in person, this would require leaving the house, Jason.
Okay. So I was just I'll tell you mine then. So I was just down there. I had to get my mom out of her place got flooded, so I was down there, and I'm driving down the beach, and there's a guy, big huge guy, Criscoed up with oil.
Yes.
Walking down the beach, snake around his neck, and two big ass barbells, and he's just walking down the beach, and I was like, I'm back in Florida.
That's how you know, man.
Yeah.
That is how you know. Yeah. I see them all the time on like in the Facebook groups. I don't see them in person as much. They are talking about all of the terrible things in their life. And so
all right.
I'm like, yeah.
And last Florida themed question here. What's your go-to pub sub?
Oh, I love the ultimate on whole wheat. I just like the whole wheat bread better. Tons of mayo and provolone cheese.
If you don't know, for those of you viewers who don't know, the pub sub is a Florida, not exclusive to Florida staple, but we'll just call it a Florida. I think Florida owns the pub sub.
It's a thing. It might be one of the reasons a lot of people just stay.
Not the
beach isn't even that enticing anymore.
Right.
Because Florida man with the barbells and the copper tone. But pub sub is, what's your favorite?
I just do usually just veggies. Because
Really?
I don't eat meat, so it's every now and then I might. Well, I mean, I don't live in Florida anymore, but when I do go back, it's
dream about it.
Yeah, either just veggies or maybe sometimes some tuna.
Oh,
yeah,
tuna sub's good.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
But veggies it is.
That's a good one.
So, anything you'd like to share? Any closing words? Anything you'd like to plug, Emily?
Oh my gosh. I just want to say that I have been listening to this podcast for like a year and a half now. And it was just because my wife was handling the back end. And now every time she gets an edit and she's putting things together, I get so excited to hear your voice. And honestly, the conversations that you're having with people are so important and so necessary. And like, recovery is really scary. And I've had a lot of really close people to me die in the last 10 years, honestly, that maybe could have found a little more hope and a little more help. If things like this were around them more. And so I really think that what you guys are doing is amazing. and like recovery is a fucking journey. It doesn't happen overnight. And I love you all. And so like now you can just love yourself. That's really all you got to do. So
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'd like to give another shout out to Wolf, your
my
son.
baby. I didn't talk about him at all.
One of our, yeah. So Wolf always helps Gabby if I'm like, is this edit any good? Is it too choppy? She'll be like,
Hold on, let me show Wolf.
Wolf loves it. And then we get the thumbs up from Wolf. So shout out to Wolf.
Wolf loves you guys.
Well, appreciate it. We love Wolf. So as Joseph always says, there's 1,000 ways in, there's 1,000 ways out, and we hope you found yours.